everyone, welcome back to Motuts, Motion Made Easy. My name is Jon Navarro, and today we'll be bringing you another motion title tutorial inspired by the 2014 film Godzilla. And this tutorial is actually inspired by another designer's tutorial who created something similar to this using Adobe After Effects. That tutorial was inspired by the 2014 trailer, and let's just take a quick look at it. So now that we've seen the title inspiration, let's go into Motion and create a new project. So we're going to set this project to 1920 by 1080p, broadcast HD, and we're going to set the frame rate to 24 frames per second. Now in our new project window, as usual, we're going to go in and we're going to reset the view area so that we can see the entire preview window. We also want to hit Shift V so that we can see anything that falls outside of the boundaries of the actual project window. So we're going to start by creating our groups. Let's go to Add Object, Group, or you can choose to hit Shift Command N. We're going to be creating 5 groups, and let's rename each of our groups. The first group is going to be called Cloud. The second group is going to be called Title. The third group is going to be called Smoke. The fourth group is going to be called Debris. And the final group is going to be called Vignette. Let's also add a light. And now I want to turn the light off. I want to keep the light off for the purposes of creating the composition and all the layers. And then at the end, we'll adjust the light settings so that we can get our final look. So now with the 5 groups selected, I want to right click and then I want to select group. So what I'm doing here is I'm nesting the 5 groups into one master group. You'll see why later. And then I want to rename this group Finished. Now I want to build out each group. So with the cloud background group selected, let's go to Library, choose Generators, select Clouds, and then add the clouds to the cloud group. Next, go into the inspector, click the Generator tab, and let's change the settings. Let's increase the scale, both vertical and horizontal, of the clouds group to 64. And lastly, let's animate the clouds. I want to do this by adjusting the offset. Hit the record button and create a keyframe at the start of the comp. Pull the X value to 1130 and leave the Y value at 0. Now, go to the end of the timeline on the comp and increase the X value to 1920 and then the Y value to 54. Lastly, I want to reduce the layer strengths. So, change the first layer strength to 0.05, the second one to 0.15, the third to 0.25, and the last one to 1. Now, lock this group. We're done with the clouds layer, and we're going to move on to the next group. Now for the title group, I want to add the title layers. First, let's select the text tool, click in the project window, and type in your title. Obviously for this title we're using Godzilla, but you can make this title your own. Then we want to click out, reselect the title text tool, click in another blank area of the project window, and repeat this process. For the background title, which is the Japanese characters, what we're going to do is we're going to go to Google Translate, type in Godzilla, and then change the language translation to Japanese. This will give us the Japanese characters we need for the background. Now, quick tip. If you don't already have a Japanese keyboard installed on your computer, if you're not familiar with how to add the keyboard, simply go to your preferences, click on keyboard, go to Input Sources, and there you can click the Add button and add the language for the keyboard that you want to include. Choose Japanese, and this will load several fonts compatible with the Japanese characters. This will make it a lot easier once we go into the title editor. Make sure you do this before you start the project, otherwise you're going to have to close out Motion and then reopen it, as it doesn't automatically update the fonts. Hopefully Apple will change this in the future. So now with that done, let's edit these titles. So, we want to format the type. First, select the Godzilla title layer. Then, change the font by choosing Text, Format, and the font that I used for this title was called Colonna Condensed. If you don't have this font, I've included a link to it in the description. However, you can use Impact and it'll work just as well. Next, we want to change the alignment to center aligned, and we want to increase the font size to 350. Lastly, let's reset the position parameters by going into the properties and click Reset under the position dropdown. Also, we want to adjust the anchor point to 200 pixels on the Y-axis. For the Japanese character layer, let's go into the text and format it. For this font, I chose to use a font called Toppan Bunkyu Extra Bold. Again, if you installed the Japanese keyboard as I instructed earlier, you should be able to find this in the drop-down menu. Once you've chosen your font, we want to change the size to 555. We want to realign it to center. And again, we want to go into properties and reset the property position. However, I want this to be in a very specific position, so we're going to set the X position to -13. We're going to set the Y position to 58. We're going to set the Z position to 600. And what this will do is create some separation between the foreground text and the background text to give the illusion of added depth. Now with our text group complete, let's lock off this group and move on to the next one. Now we want to create the smoke. This is going to be the element that kind of swirls in front of the font, again adding some depth and dimension to the overall title. First, let's go into the library, select Content, and then select the search tool. In the search area, type in Cloud. Choose the very dim cloud PNG and then apply it to the smoke layer. Next, we're going to turn this into a particle emitter by hitting the E key. In the Inspector tab for the emitter layer, let's change some of the settings. I want to change the shape to wave, and I want to check on 3D. Now let's set the longitude to 90% and the emission range to 90%. Also, for the emission range, I want to create a keyframe at the beginning of the timeline, then move the playhead to the 1 second mark, and I want to drop the emission range to 25%. Now, make sure that the depth ordered and the interleave particles options are both checked. In the cell control, set the birth rate to 75, the birth random to 5, and the initial number to 100. For the life, set to 10, life random, set to 5, and for the speed, go to the start of the timeline, create a keyframe, and set the speed to 1920. Now, move the playhead to roughly 1.5 seconds, or 1 second and 12 frames, and adjust the speed to 650. Finally, let's change the angle to 15 degrees and set the scale to 300 with the scale randomness set to 50. Now that the smoke layer is complete, let's add some behaviors to give the smoke a bit of a more organic feel. First, let's add a gravity behavior by clicking on Behaviors, Simulations, and choose Gravity. Next, I want to check Affect Sub-Objects and adjust the acceleration to 50. Now, let's add our second behavior by going back into Behaviors, choosing Simulations, and then choose Wind. Now, for the thickness and velocity, let's add keyframes. Let's move to the beginning of the timeline, and let's change the air thickness to 0.8 and the velocity to 1. Finally, I want to add a couple of filters to stylize the overall smoke. So let's go into Filter, Color, and choose Colorize. Change the white value to red. Next, we want to go back and add our second filter. So choose Filter, Color, and select Brightness. In the Inspector tab, we want to adjust the brightness to 2.15. With the smoke layer done, let's lock off this layer and continue on to the debris layer. With the debris group selected, what I want to do is go into Library and find a debris particle. So choose Content, open up the search area, and type in Geo. We want to select the Geo 10 PNG, then apply it to the debris layer. Next, select the particle image in the debris group and click L. This is to create a replicator. Now that we have a replicator, let's go into the Inspector tab and check 3D. Under the Replicator tab, let's change the shape to box. Let's reduce the size to 100 and the ranks to 10. In the Cell Controls section, I want to adjust the angle to 30 degrees the angle end to 180 degrees, the angle randomness to 360 degrees, and this will allow the debris to float around organically in the composition. Let's set the color mode to colorize and change the color to black. We want the debris to look like it's burnt ash, so setting it to black will eliminate the gradient of the original particle image. Now, let's change the scale to 10%, the scale end to 5%, and the scale randomness to 50%. We'll go into the properties, and I want to shift the X position to 1080, and then finally, I want to add two behaviors to the replicator. The first behavior is going to be a repel behavior, and the second one is going to be a random motion behavior. For the repel behavior, change the strength to 50, the rate to 6, the influence to 700, and then I want to make sure that X, Y, and Z are all selected. For the random motion behavior, let's check Effect Sub Objects. Let's change the amount to 50, the frequency to 1.1, the noise to 1, and again we want to include the X, Y, and Z. We're almost nearing the finish line, guys, so with the debris group complete, we can lock this group off. The final group we have to create is a vignette group. Let's go into Library, Filters, Stylize, and choose Vignette. Apply this to the vignette group. From here, you can adjust the vignette group to suit your liking. Again, there are no rights or wrong here. With this group complete, let's lock this off. Finally, let's choose the finish group and let's add a behavior. So go to Basic Motion and choose Fade In, Fade Out. Now, select the Fade In, Fade Out behavior, and we want to adjust the fade in time to 10 and the fade out time to 30. To finish everything off, let's go into the light group that we created. Let's change the color to red. Let's increase the intensity to 750, the fall off to 5, the diameter to 45, and that's it. And there you have it, guys. Our Godzilla title is complete. From here, everything else is all a matter of personal preferences. For the demo that I created, I wanted to give the illusion of backlighting, so I went into the text and added a glow to the text groups. Again, guys, feel free to play around with this and make it your own. You can add your own custom flair. There are no rights or wrongs to this, so just have fun. My name's Jon Navarro. Thanks again for watching Motuts Motion Made Easy. If you enjoyed this week's tutorial, please don't forget to click like and subscribe to our channel. You can leave suggestions for future tutorials in the comment section below, and you can also find us on Facebook and Instagram at Motuts Official, or you can use hashtag Motuts Official if you want to engage in a conversation. And we hope you'll join us again next week for another Motion Monday tutorial. Thanks again for watching.